Welcome to Profiler and Snapshot Debugging in version 19. Hey, I'm Eric, and with version 19 we got a profiler. A profiler is a tool that will tell you what code has been executed, how many times, how long it took. Similar to the old code coverage thing we had at some point, but different. The challenge for the profiler is that the profiler is kind of an add-on to the snapshot debugger, and the snapshot debugger has not been very popular because it's a bit strange and there's a lot of different information going around on how to and how not and if and then and all that stuff. So I thought I want to do a video on snapshot debugging and the profiler. So if you come for the profiler, that will be at the end of the video. I suggest you watch the whole thing, but we'll go through the snapshot debugger first and then the profiler at the end of the video. And the first thing that I actually want to touch upon, let's go right into this here. Here's the documentation. That's always a good place to start. And the documentation states very clearly that snapshot debugging allows a delegated admin. For a delegated admin, the delegated admin, and we can see that in order to do anything, you have to be a delegated admin. But just to be very specific here, I am not a delegate admin in this video. I am a regular super user on a tenant. So this is my own tenant, and I'm not a delegate. I don't have a CSP, so I don't have anybody who could become delegate admin. I'm just a user. It seems to work fine. So maybe documentation is not up to real world thing. So anyway, but in order to do anything like this, do anything with the snapshot debugger, you have the user that are involved in this has to have the D365 snapshot debug permission. It says permission group, but it's actually a permission set. So you know, could be better documentation. I'm sorry we don't want to say that. And I don't really feel like this is an area where we as the community can update the documentation to be correct. I think this has to be on Microsoft. Anyway, apart from that, so I just want to clear that out of the way first, that you don't have to be a delegate admin. You can be yourself if you're a user. Anyway, so let's actually for a second define what is snapshot debugging, because I think that's also a part of the confusion. So snapshot debugging is a way to, it's a two-step operation. So the first step is that we record execution of code, and we can do that on a production environment, which is why it's interesting, because we are not normally allowed to debug a production environment. So we can record what goes on. We cannot debug. We cannot break and look at stuff while it's happening. We can record a snapshot session, and then afterwards we can go in and then we can replay what has been recorded, and we can look at that. So it's very important to understand that these are two different operations. re-record, then we replay what we have. And when we do this, let me go back in here. So in this case, I have a for this example, I created a function here on the customer list called it's an action even called heavy stuff that runs through customers, and then it runs through the customer ledger entries, and then it runs through the detailed customer ledger entries. So there are kind of 3 loops, and I have placed them in separate procedures. So when I want to do the first part, record, for the first thing we need to understand is what is actually getting recorded. So if you do nothing here, then we're just recording what lines of code has been executed in what order. If you define breakpoints, then those breakpoints become snap points, and what happens that the code is not breaking at a breakpoint or a snap point, but everything is recorded as if you had a break. So at this point, the stack is recorded, all the variables and all that stuff, that information is recorded on a breakpoint. So all the places where you want to inspect stuff, you need to make sure you have breakpoints. And you can see that I have a breakpoint here in this case, and I have another breakpoint on the customer list.dal. So actually in base code. So I have 2 breakpoints, but now they actually become snap points. So data collection points. So even though when we're replaying, so at part 2, when we're replaying what we have, we can only actually see values and stacks and all that good stuff on places where we have created a snap point. Okay, so let's go in here and take a look at what I have in my launch.json, because I have added a snapshot. So if we go to add configuration, so I have added one of these initialize, I can't even say that, sorry, a snapshot debugging session on the cloud. So this is, oh, did I do that? I didn't want to do that. I have plenty here. This is the one I want, yeah. So we can see that I have told to look at my production environment. I have specified my tenant. Break on next. So this is slightly misleading because it's not break on next. It's actually initiate on the next, in this case, web client. And execution context is called debug and profile, because we're also getting some profiler at the end of this. So the first thing I need to do now is actually I need to use the Initialize Snapshot Debugging. I do this and it will connect to my production environment, and we can see that the snapshot debugging initialized request for the debug context, blah blah, has succeeded. So and if you notice down here in the lower left corner, it says 2, and that means that right now I actually have 2 snapshot sessions. I have one from the other day where you see that's status downloaded, and one that's initialized. And so we're interested in the initialize. So if I go back to my browser here, and I will reload the client. So remember, break on next web client is exactly what we're getting here now. A snapshot debugging session with blah, blah, blah has been started for you. Start the scenario that has been failing and needs troubleshooting. So at this point, we're recording. This is very important. Now we are recording, meaning that we have also recorded the role center. So let me go to customers. So now we have also recorded this. And if I go to process and do heavy stuff, and that's done. Now that is also recorded. Okay, so I'll leave this, go back to Business Central, go back to Visual Studio Code, and tell this to finish snapshot debugging on the server. And which one do you want to finish? Well, I want to finish the one I started. So as you can see now that this does require two things. This certainly requires coordination. So it's not like you can just know, oh, we got 200 users sitting on production and I want to debug something with somebody, because then somebody else might log in and get the session. So there has to be coordination. The other thing is that you can see now that we have in the snapshots, we have two zip files. So the EE90, that's the one we just had, and you can see the E8, that's the one I did the other day. So with this in mind, let's actually see what we got. So I'll close some of this, and I can click down here and say, okay, which one do we want to replace? So now we're starting phase 2 of this. We're done with phase 1. We used the start session. We got the user to log in right and do the stuff, and then we clicked finished. So we have the recording now. So now we are offline. We're not connected to anything. So I will grab the one from today, and you can see now it looks like the debugger started, right? So, and remember, I had 2 breakpoints, snap points. So I get the first one here, which was on open page on page 22. And we can see that, well, most of this, so here's one that perhaps is initialized. There's something, something is happening, but we're pretty early here. If I then do step, you see, now I stepped into the CRM integration management code unit, but as you can see that at this point, because I stepped away from my snap point, there's no longer any useful information over here about variables, and I can step further. At some point, let me just do the F5. So what will happen now? See, now I get the breakpoint or snap point inside heavy stuff. So the fact that the code we first saw on open page kind of finished, and then the user clicked on something, that is just tied together. So now the user already clicked on heavy stuff, and this is going. And you can see we get a variable information here, and I can, if I do this, then we're done, because there were no more snap points, so execution ended. I can go back and do this again. So let's run this one again. I'll do F5, and this time I'm gonna step here. So you can see now I'm just doing F10. If I'm doing an F11, we'll get into all the way down, stuff like this. We don't have any information over here, but we have all the steps. So that is great. that is awesome. Let me check for it. Yeah, we got time. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That's a great way to examine what goes on. Let's try the thing that you all came to the video to watch, the profiler. And then we need to use another command here called generate profile file. I click this one and I select the recording, and we got a profiler. And now you can see, you can see the. Let me actually just. You can see the first challenge with the profilers that we got on open page for the headline, on open page for more headline, and then we get to another page on the role center. So all this is really, most of this in the profiler is the role center. Then at some point down here, you see on init. Let me move up so you can see it from my big head. That's page 22. So everything about this is just, noise, because unless you wanted to profile the role center. And we can see that lots of stuff goes on the customer list. But at the end of this thing, we have test the action. So if we go back here and take a look, we have action test, the on action trigger here. On action on test. So what do we actually know about this? Well, we can see that this function spent in total 929 milliseconds were used in this function, but we can open it up. No, hang on, go away. We can open it up. And we can open this up again. And sometimes these numbers make sense, and other times it does not make sense at all. We'll try again just in a minute and see if we can make this be more. So we can see that we got on action was called once, heavy 2 was called one time per customer, I think, and heavy 3 were called for each entry or something like that. And 794 milliseconds were used in this one, and in heavy 2 you can see that 899 milliseconds were used in total, but only 105 were used in this function because everything else was used in this guy, which makes sense. And then you would think that if heavy 2 used almost 900, then this one should say that test used 30 milliseconds by itself, and then the 899 was used by this one. But maybe it actually, maybe you can get to something like that with the percentages, but not what it's saying here. So I think this is still very new, but it's clearly not right. But let me actually grab the other one. I can't remember if that one made more sense. So this is the same thing again. No, that's also very strange. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about is that we, sometimes this, depending on what the content is, you'll get way too much. So what I prefer to do is actually when I do, initialize snapshot debugging. So now we create a new one, hopefully. Sometimes if this fails and suddenly it throws you strange authentication errors, it seems that this one can't figure out if you were authenticated, but that has timed out or stuff like that. So you have to restart VS Code. I've seen that a couple of times. Anyway, we have the contest ready. So what I prefer to do is to start directly, in this case, page equal 22 in the URL. So we avoid all the noise from role center or stuff like that. I can do heavy stuff here. Heavy stuff is done. I go back and I say finish snapshot debugging. This one, now it's downloading the zip file. And we can see that now come on. The snapshot debugger attach session has finished because I didn't get the, let's try that again. So now we have started. I do this, but I didn't get the fancy message. That's interesting. Snapshot debugging. See, this is kind of weird, eh? Let's so something now. We can take a look here and see that we have one that's initialized the first user with a session, but clear. Let's really start a session. Nope. Let's say finish to that one. Okay, let's initialize snapshot debugging again. Has succeeded. Control F5. No, I am no longer allowed to snapshot debug. That's interesting. So, but I think that's actually a great way to end the video, because this is kind of finicky, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, and maybe I'm not clever enough to understand why while 1 + 1 is not equal to 2 in the time spent in the debugger. I've seen profile outputs that make total sense, and it was on the decimals it was correct, and then I've seen profiler output like we saw here where saying, doesn't really make sense. So I'm looking forward to play a lot more with this, but it's still kind of weird. I want to show you, this has become a tradition. The video is over. Now we're going to a quick bonus content thing. Because every good hacker would ask, what's in the zip file? And the zip file is kind of weird. No, it's not really weird, but you can see that I know this is small. I do apologize for that. You can see that there's a bunch of files in here, a number.mdc And as far as I can see, these are, and then all the code that was used. So we can see that we touched tons of code units because of stuff that goes on. So then we get the source code that's touched. And I do believe that all these files with .mdc are a binary, basically that's a frame. So if you think about the snapshot as a movie, so you got a frame each time something happened, and this is in a binary form that I have not really taken time out of my schedule to figure out if I can find a layout for that. But anyway, here that's what's in the zip file. Just wanted to show you that. Now the video is over. See you again next time. Take care and stay safe. Bye.